Peter is shockingly different, shockingly inspiring, and never forgettable.
Darling, come here. Right? And over came the husband, and she went, get the checkbook out, I want to live here.
I know them, I respect them, I've worked with them for over a year now, and I thought, what the fuck have they done, if I can be blunt? But Kodak invented digital camera, but never launched it because they were worried it would affect their film sales.
Yeah, they couldn't think beyond tomorrow. The only thing every person wants in life comes down to one word, and that's progress. Oh, do you remember that guy? He was from England. He does business consultancy.
Very handsome chap.
Very handsome chap with the grey hair.
To me, this is a wearable reminder of an achievement, because I bought a watch every time I sold a company. So if it was a Mont Blanc, I got Ernie Bell, I got...
And the greatest sales tool of all is a customer's imagination.
Welcome back to another episode of Success is a System. I'm Mike Greene, this is Peter Turley. Now listen, Peter and I met probably 2 months ago.
It's only 3 weeks ago.
It's really, Christ, life goes too quickly. But listen, I was at this event in Killashee, I probably said it wrong, beautiful, beautiful place of Ireland. We're now in Dublin at the RDS. Been an amazing event today. But the minute I saw Peter, I said, I've got to do a podcast with you. Peter is shockingly different, shockingly inspiring, and never forgettable. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Unforgettable. We'd say unforgettable.
Unforgettable. Well, there you go. You see, I learned something today. But you came in, I remember that event, and it had been very smooth, and we had great speakers, and we'd had measured speakers, and you walked in with this big trophy.
I fucking won again! Me! Won again! Not you. Not you, madam. Not you. Not you there with the grey hair. None of you won it either. I fucking won. Bunch of fucking losers.
Tell us how you do that bit, because I think you are so unforgettable. And at the time, I know I've said this to you, so I don't mean it in an offensive way, but as you walked in, I thought, Richie, Eddie, I know them, I respect them, I've worked with them for over a year now, and I thought, what the fuck have they done, if I can be blunt? And I thought they'd made a mistake, but then it sort of unveiled itself to what you're about. Explain to the people who are watching what you did as that entrance.
Oh yeah, that was quite something. So it's about an understanding that there are two things that have changed massively in the last 20 years in the whole of humanity. And the first thing is that the attention span of the human being, Microsoft in Canada, how they measured this I don't know, but in 2007 they measured it at 16 seconds. In 2017, 10 years after the introduction of the smartphone, they measured it at less than 8 seconds.
That's the attention span of the average person.
Of the average person.
So some could be less.
Some could be less. Now, that was in 2017. Now, with everybody stuck at home for a couple of years with the pandemic and the much higher use of smartphones, screens, all that kind of stuff, and the amount of information that's coming at us, what do you think the attention span might be at now?
What do you think?
I think it's about 4 seconds.
Well, and interestingly, they say the first impressions count. Now, not only do first impressions count, but we got a tiny window to make it count.
Oh, to make it count. This is really, really important, right? And I mean really important. Because what I've discovered over the years is it all comes down to perception, right? I mean, everything comes down to perception, right? So what I mean by that is, if I perceive you instantly as valuable, that will dictate in my subconscious whether I will become a client of yours and how much I will pay you. That doesn't happen in our conscious mind. That happens in our subconscious mind, right? So, and it's become more and more difficult to get into people's subconscious because so much is coming. The human mind is learning to block stuff out, right? Do you remember years ago when we were first watching stuff on the internet and little ads were popping up in the corner, and you'd be slowly moving your mouse across and closing it all down, and that was a conscious thing. Now what happens is you can be watching a video, you can be watching whatever it is you're watching, and you're doing it unconsciously. Your mouse is and your hand is moving, and you're closing stuff down without even noticing it, right? So think about all the people that spend money on advertising that we are subconsciously closing down and not letting into our mind.
So you get paid by some of the world's biggest corporations to go in and inspire, train, motivate, connect and teach people to connect on selling. Because, let's face it, and I'll often talk to companies when I'm mentoring them, and I will say, I'll go in maybe for a morning session, I might say something like, who's in sales? 1 or 2 hands will go up. And I'll say, all put your hands up, because we're either in sales or supporting sales. Sales are the lifeblood of the business. No business exists without selling.
Without selling, absolutely.
So what got you into sales training as opposed to selling? What's your background? Did you start in selling? Have you always been training? Tell us a little bit.
Okay, so I started selling about 30 years ago. Inadvertently, I didn't even know I was selling. Right?
So you didn't set out to be a salesman?
No. What happened was, I, at the age of 18, went to London in 1988 to work as an architectural model maker. You know when they're going to build a big scheme, and they make the miniature of it in the big glass box, right? And you got paid in those days based on the quality of the work that you could provide and the time it took you to produce the quality work. Right. You got paid by the hour, right? And I had these managers that were measuring everything, all the windows in a line and all the stuff, we're measuring it with a vernier calipers. It's a scientific measurement tool to make sure that everything was within a quarter of a millimeter correct and all that kind of stuff. And that dictated your pay. Now, I had been working there for about 6 months, and I got asked to go with a big model we'd made with the van driver to help deliver it to a marketing suite. And when we brought it in and we set it up in the middle of the marketing suite and put the glass box on, the strangest thing happened. All the marketing people came in and they were all going, wow, look at that. Oh, wow, that's amazing. Did you make this? And I was really chuffed. I was going, oh, yeah, I made that. Yeah, it's brilliant. And they went, John, look at the cars. Because we had lots of little cars, to give scale and life to the model. But the cars that we put on, actually, there was no time given to. You just went to a big cupboard, got a big box of like Matchbox cars, and super glued them down just to give it life.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by. They didn't look at the little thing, the pergola, that had taken me a whole month to make. Right?
To exact scale.
To exact scale. They just went, oh, look at the cars. That took me 5 minutes at the very end. And I studied this, and I went, why did they look at that? And what was interesting about that? And I went, it's something about that was what resonated with them rather than the intricacies of the building. Right? So the very next model I made, before I randomly just put cars down, I rang the client and I said, who is your ideal customer for this development? And he said, oh yes, it's in the Docklands, and it's going to be young people from the age of 28 to 35 who work in London City, who are stockbrokers and stuff like that, and we want to get the money off them before they burn out. And the young people that earn loads of money, and we want that.
So they don't give a shit about your vernier calipers.
No. So what I did was, when the model was finished, and before I filled up the car park with cars, I emptied the box out and I got all the Porsche 911s and the 3 Series BMW coupes and glued them down.
For the uppies.
For the uppies, right? And when I went to the launch evening, I watched the people coming in, and you could see them zoom in on the car park, see the 911s, see the M3s, that were aspire to vehicles for them at that time.
So they wanted to live there.
And they immediately made a decision. This is my kind of people. I want to live there, without looking at the windows and all that.
Do you know what
kind
that
of stuff.
reminds me of? You know, somebody, I remember in America, every restaurant sells steaks. So there used to be a saying, it's not the steak, it's the sizzle.
Yes.
So you remember the old sizzle plate they bring out, which everyone in the restaurant says, I want one of them, I want it.
Yeah.
It's just a steak, but it's on a sizzle plate. And then another version of it was a fruitcake might be £5. But if I ice it somewhat and I put someone's anniversary or birthday or a character from Disney on, it might be worth £50. So suddenly it's not the core. The core has to deliver, but it's the periphery that connects.
It's the connection, right? So to test the theory, the next job I got from the same client, it was in Hampton Court, right? And it was down by the river, and it was this massive apartment block. But it had lawns that went right down to the riverbank, and it had a concierge desk and all that kind of stuff, right? So I said to him, who are you aiming this at? And he said, the local residents who have the big house and they don't want to mow the lawn anymore, and the children have moved out and all that kind of stuff, and we want them to downsize and come and live here. So I went, right, I'm going to test this theory. So again, I went to the box and I emptied it out, and I got all the Jaguar XKs, and I got all the black Land Rovers,
and
Range
age
Rovers,
group, different family stage.
yes, and I put every car that I thought would resonate with those people into the car park. And again, I went to the launch night. And I'll never forget it, right? This woman, she was probably about 65, I think for 70, right? And she had gold everywhere, right? And she was orange. She'd just come back from Santa Ponza, right? And she looked, and I watched her really just look at it and go, And she went, darling, come here. Right? And over came the husband, and she went, get the checkbook out, I want to live here. Right? And it was purely from a model.
With some cars.
And it was just because it was I had a couple of little River Gin Palace boats on the jetty and that kind of stuff on it. But it was the fact that it was the Jaguars and the Range Rovers and that kind of thing that took it from just a bland building into, these are our kind of people. I want to live here, right?
So is it selling the dream?
No, what it is, it's about making what you have resonate with your ideal type of client, right? Now that was 30 plus years ago, right? That was 88.
So you realised
I learned that lesson.
You'd learnt a lesson, you'd found a hook. It wasn't about the product, it was about the customer. And it was about connecting to the customer.
And making it relevant.
And making the product relevant and resonant.
Yes,
and so on.
and resonate with them.
How does that then translate from making models to selling?
So I did that for many years, and then I ended up working in a manufacturing plant, owning a manufacturing plant.
Right.
And we supplied parts to companies like Motorola, the little plastic housings that the phones go in and stuff like that, right? And I watched my biggest customer supplied parts to Motorola in 2004. 85% of my turnover went to that company, and it was flying. And I remember one time being in a meeting, and a question was brought up. We've heard from America that there's somebody trying to design a phone that's also do you remember PDAs?
Yeah.
Right? It's also a PDA, and it's also a camera, and it's also this, and it's also that. What do you think? Is that something we should be concerned with? And the people from Motorola laughed and said, oh no, we've talked to our customers and they've said no, if they want they want pictures, they'll buy a camera. If they want a PDA, they'll buy a PDA. If they want to send text, they'll buy what was those things we used to have? Pager, yeah. And they weren't in the slightest bit worried about it. Within a very short space of time of that, we all know what happened.
Yeah.
Apple appeared into a market they had no right to go into.
They were computers, not phones.
They were computers, not phones. Completely different market. They had no credibility in it. And they came out with this new thing. And it wiped Motorola and Nokia, the two biggest phone makers, off the world map.
And even at the time, I remember with the camera thing, Kodak invented digital camera, but never launched it because they were worried it would affect their film sales.
Yeah, they couldn't think beyond tomorrow.
Well, and so wedded to the past.
Yes, and that's what's really important. Now, the big lesson for me was I had 45 staff and a manufacturing facility. We were producing 10,000 mobile phone parts a day.
Well,
and when Motorola went down the you-know-what, what do you think happened to 85% of my turnover? Disappeared, right? And it was the biggest lesson I ever learned because I had put too many eggs in one basket.
Yeah, I went bust in my 20s. Did it take you down or did you...
Oh, it wiped me out.
Right.
Absolutely wiped me out. But, again, lessons learned, right? Make sure you're not in that situation again, right? And then I ended up working in really high-end retail. And I was working out selling stuff that was 100 grand plus.
Wow.
Right? So I had to learn, and I learned that luxury selling is not like any other type of selling. It's all about making it relevant to the customer, right?
And what sort of things were you selling?
Oh, everything from high-end 7 Series BMWs to, you know, birthday parties for 100 grand to like really luxury stuff. But what happened, what I realized when I was selling it was, it all came down to this thing of making it personal and relevant to these type of people, right? Because somebody who has 100 grand to spend on a birthday party is very wrapped up in themselves, right? Yeah. So you've got to wrap it up for themselves, right? And you've got to make them feel special and make it so incredibly relevant, Mike, right? So one of the things I learned was too many people show up with the solution, don't they? They show up where they go, oh, this is my company, these are all the things we can do, and we're wonderful, right? And the customer feels left out, right? So the first thing I learned was involve the customer from the start. But it's very hard to...
Is that research, or do you mean thinking through what they want?
Thinking through what they want, right? So it's very hard to get from the customer what they really want, because they're afraid they're going to rip you off.
Yeah.
Because they've watched 30 years of Del Boy Trotter on Only Fools and Horses, and they don't. Yeah. This time next year, Rodney, right? Yeah. But the one thing that has done for 30, 40 years is told people you can't trust salespeople. So they're very guarded, right?
And is that why people don't like selling?
Yes, they don't want to be seen as Del Boy, right?
Yeah.
Like we think when we walk into somebody's office that we're wonderful.
Yeah.
But
and our product's wonderful.
And our product's wonderful. And they look up and they see us coming in and they see from here down and from here up, they see Del Boy Trotter's head and the flat cap, right? It's facts, you know. So what I had to do was I had to break down that and get in with what was it they really wanted. But they're so guarded, they don't want to tell. So you have to make it, so what I discovered was, if you make it fun, and you make it exciting, they will tell you everything they want. And then all you have to do is offer them everything they've told you that they want, right? So what I started...
But even, it sounds like, even if they didn't realise they wanted it, because you were looking quite stereotypically at the Porsches or the Jaguars and that, and they wouldn't want to believe that they were so easily profilable or predictable.
Yes.
But you looked at it, and so it wasn't outward in the sense of, oh, you clearly love Porsche, I'm going to put a Porsche in it.
Yeah.
It was seeing what they maybe didn't see, but what made them predictable within their profile of shopper. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. Now, what's happening there is it's becoming very complicated in that description, right? What you're going to understand is the only thing every person wants in life comes down to one word, and that's progress. It's the only thing everybody wants. We want progress for our business. We want progress for our family. We want progress for our social standing, whatever it happens to be, right? And if we strip every single thing away and go, what is the progress in this individual situation? We can get to the nub very, very quickly, right? Now, progress is individual, okay? So you're there, you've got a beautiful gold Rolex on. Now, I don't know what progress might be for you. It might be an even goldier, blingier, diamondier Rolex, or it might be a holiday in the Maldives, right?
Well, funny, little zig with that. Because people are often, if I'm looking for the time, I'll look at my phone and I'll tap it and think, oh, it's whatever. And I don't look at my watch. I've got a watch on. To me, this is a wearable reminder of an achievement, because I bought a watch every time I sold a company. So I got some Mont Blanc, I got Ernie Bell, I got different things. So it is a constant, I might just suddenly become conscious of it and think, that's when I bought this, that's when I sold it.
Yes.
So, but different things do have great meaning.
They do have great meaning, but don't forget, before you bought that particular progress, it was an aspire to. And it was, this is my dream. When I sell this company, if I make X out of that company, I'm going to buy my gold date just. It's a date just, right? Now, so that's in your imagination. So my skill is to learn, how do I get into your imagination? And people don't want to let you into their imagination.
Because they don't want to be predictable.
They don't want to be predictable. They don't want to feel there. But, well, no, everybody's individual. Yes, everybody's predictable, that they want progress. Our job is to figure out what that progress is. But to be able to figure out what that progress is, we have to be fun. We have to bring that guard down, right?
Which I think is a nice segue to, you've gone from making models to understanding people, to turning that into how to connect with, to sell to people, to clearly selling at really high ticket to people. Because I'm assuming when you were saying 100 grand, you're going back 20 years. So that's like $250,000 now.
More.
Exactly. So big, to now training people and coming to conferences of today, 700 people, whatever, thousands of people I know you've done, and getting those principles across, but in a way that they'll never forget. Memorable, unforgettable. So then you've got the goldfish. Let's talk about the goldfish, because it's kind of like your icon, your brand, one of the tools that you use to never be forgettable. So talk to us about, where does that come from? Where does that come from? So now I've realised I can understand people, I can sell to people, I can help other people sell to people. Why shock people? Where did you get this understanding that you can't just be good, or you've got to be different?
Because, you see, these things, right? They have taken over our entire lives. They've changed human behaviour. And I watch people, okay? I sit in the traffic, and instead of listening to music or whatever, I will sit in the traffic and I will watch people on the footpaths, and I will watch their behaviour, walking along, staring at phones and all that kind of stuff. And I see that they'll walk out in front of a moving bus or whatever without even thinking about it, right? The other thing I've noticed is, when we were kids, say when we were late teens, early 20s, I probably knew somewhere in the guts of 100 telephone numbers off the top of my head. I mean, you were probably the same, right?
No, I never had that memory, but I'm impressed.
But nowadays, I couldn't tell you one phone number.
You never rang a number in terms of dialing it.
You don't dial them anymore. It's all on there. We don't need to remember. You just say dial, dial Fred, Mary, dial Fred, dial whatever, right? It doesn't. So we're losing the skill of using the memory muscle. Now, if I'm losing the skill of using the memory muscle, so is everybody else, right? Now, well, what does that mean for us from a business perspective, right? So what happens is we go out, we go to a networking, we go to a convention such as this one we're at today, we meet people. And we wake up the next day and we've got a pile of business cards on our desk.
Yeah.
And we look at it and we go, oh, I can't remember that person. No, I don't remember that person.
Have you
No, I
been
don't
with me at some of these events?
Well, we do that, don't we? And then we put the cards in the bin. And that's it, right? And as I said to you before, nobody needs what we have at the moment that we tell them what they do. They go, oh, I must remember you when... But 6 months later, they can't remember, right? Try and imagine the scenario. It probably happens in offices all over the world. It's an open plan office. And somebody goes, oh, we need a sales trainer. We need a business advisor. We need whatever, right? And they go, oh, do you remember that guy? He was from England. He does business consultancy.
Very handsome chap.
Very handsome chap with the grey hair. Anybody remember who it was? And they all just go, no, right? So the person who asked the question goes, fuck it, I'll Google it, right?
Yeah.
So what do? Google business mentor. Now, what happens?
12 other people pop up.
What, 12,000 other people pop up, right? So you're completely and utterly at the risk of whatever Google throws at you, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought, right, how do we make ourselves memorable in that time frame? So if it's 6 months, 8 months, a year, how will they remember me or Mike as against everybody else, right? Yes. So I started to come up with experiments to see would stuff happen, right? And I was talking to one of my kids, Mike, and I was talking about this reduction from 16 seconds to 8 seconds in the attention span. And he went, we all used to say the goldfish was really stupid because it only had a 9-second attention span. And I went, yeah, that's right. We all used to say that. And he said, you should go on stage and talk about this with a goldfish in the bag. And I went, oh, come on, that'd be weird. And he went, no, do it. So
it's funny because my kids will sometimes say, Dad, you've got less attention than the goldfish guy.
Right. Yeah. So the next thing was I was invited to represent Ireland as a professional competitive speaker.
Right.
And I wanted to do a talk about this change in the attention span. So here I arrived out on stage with the fish in the bag, like you get it from the fun fair.
And talk us through, you walk up, you don't talk about the fish, you just hold it.
No, just stand there.
You just stand there and...
looking around as if the fish wasn't even there, right? And it's so funny because you see I watch the audience out of the corner of my eye and they're leaning forward, go, what's he doing with the fish? Why has he got fish? What's going on with the fish? And I say, anybody guess what I call my little friend? And of course they'll shout out things like Nemo and Dory and the typical fish names that we know from the movie. And I go, no, I call him with chips. Right? And of course, if you were to say that in front of 2,000-3,000 people,
someone always,
you'll hear the ripples of the laughter and it's funny and all the rest of it. But there's always somebody who's at the front that goes, no! Sorry, madam, was that you? Did you say no? Why did you say no? No, you can't eat the fish. Let me explain something. If God hadn't intended us to eat fish, he wouldn't have made them out of food. And then, mayhem happens, right? Allows me to lead into the bit about the 8-second attention span. Right?
And yet society doesn't want us to stand out. They want us to fit in, blending, not be memorable.
Now, you see, there's a thing about that, right? I'm just going to finish with one bit about this and why it's worked for me, right? I was doing that for a couple of years and I became known around the circuit as the guy with the fish. And your business card says something about the fish gets it if you don't call
and the
me
business
card says hire me or the fish gets it, right? So it kind of resonates and people know it. And the thing about it is that when they are in that office conversation, does anybody remember the sales consultant guy? they'll go the guy with the fish,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden they go, Google sales consultant with the fish.
You're the only one.
I'm the only one.
Not 40,000.
Not 40,000. I'm the only one. What do you think that? Then they go, Jesus, if he can be the only one on the search, what if he could help us become the only one on the search?
Yeah.
Now, what do you think that does for what I can charge?
Right.
You with me?
Yeah.
So I win, but the customers also learn how to be different, right? You see, here's the thing. How many companies have become a world-beating company that you can list to me today in the last 20 years?
Christ. Well, we are hit with so much multimedia, so many choices that no one's memorable.
That's the point I'm making. So you take the big companies that we all know and love. The brands that come into our minds straight away, Coca-Cola, Facebook, Oracle, think about all the really big ones.
Yeah.
None of them appeared in the last 20 years. Not one of them. And it's because I believe while there are some great ideas coming and technology is allowing us to develop ideas quicker than ever,
Yeah.
people are not learning to stand out in the way that Facebook, Coca-Cola...
It's a really good point, and actually, you wouldn't know, but I've had a passion about what I call the 99.2. So it's true of the UK, but actually I looked at it for America and many big economies. 99.2 in the UK is the number of businesses that have less than 10 employees.
Yes.
I mean, you tend to think of Google and Apple and BP and Tesco's, and you think loads of, because that's all we hear, Unilever, Procter & Gamble. But actually, there's only 7,700 businesses in the UK that have more than 250 employees. Yeah. The vast majority are small. And part of the reason I think some of them don't scale is they can't get cut through, they can't connect, they're not memorable, and actually in everything that they do, there's 1,000 or 20,000 other choices.
Yeah, and it's how you differentiate from that choice to become the choice. Right.
Well, you need to teach me how to stand out as a mentor without being too shocking, I think. But listen, I'm so conscious of time. I could speak to you for ages and ages. I know we've already been going for about 35, 40 minutes, and I will get you back because I know that sales are the heart of every business.
Yes.
Most companies are scared of sales, and that's the saddest thing. They are the best dentist, the best architect, the best plumber, the best builder, but they hate the thought of being a salesperson. And they will actually say, I'm not a salesperson, I don't like to be pushy. Well,
yeah,
actually, being a salesperson, being pushy aren't kind of mutually connected. You don't have to be pushy. You can listen to a customer, you can resonate, connect, and deliver what they want.
I'm going to finish with this, and it's a mindset I'd like everybody to start to consider. If you are a dentist or a carpenter or a dry cleaner, it doesn't matter. But if you've done your 10,000 hours to become the best in the world at what you do, and I'm going to be better off using you than somebody else, and you don't tell me that, how dare you? How dare you not give me your expertise?
Yeah.
If you've got something better and it's going to make my life better and you don't tell me, that's on you.
And that's because people are taught not to boast, not to be arrogant, not to be pushy, is it? Or
I think it's partly...
Most people are really good at what they do, but they don't want to outwardly express it often.
Yes, but there's always somebody who's at another level. And one of the problems is that the people at the other level don't know how to describe it. Here's a thought for you. I believe there are 3 types of people in the world of work. There's the doer, the average person in the industry that does an average job and gets paid an average salary. Okay?
Yep.
Well, that can be anybody from an architect to a Formula One driver. There's always the people in the middle of the field, right? Then there's the person that they average person goes to when they get stuck or need help, and that person's called the expert. Now, the expert gets paid more money than the
Doer.
Are you with me?
Yep.
Right? But if we don't know they're an expert, we can't offer them
And
more
we
money.
naturally lump them into the average.
Yes. Now, there's a third level. This is really interesting to me. The third level. That's the person that the expert goes to when they get stuck.
So what would you call them?
They are, is only one word for it, the authority. Right? You go to the authority. Right? Now, throughout all of history, how did the authority stamp their credibility on being an authority? Well, it's very simple. We still use it in the vernacular. Is Mike Greene any good at what he does? Mike, he's so good he could write the book on it. Right? Isn't that what we say?
Yeah.
Right? So,
Well, I hope so.
for thousands of years, you stamped your authority by writing a book. It's where the word author comes from. It's just authority shortened. Oh, that's all it is.
I
Right?
hadn't thought about it.
But there's a really weird thing now. I can take the contents of your notebook here. Whatever gibberish you may or may not have written. Look, try and read that, guys, right? Right? I could just scan that. Nobody could read it, right?
Thank you.
But I could self-publish it on Amazon with nobody checking it, no editor saying it's rubbish or whatever, right? I don't mean it's rubbish, you know what I'm trying to say. And I could ring all my friends and say for the next 10 minutes, it's for free. Get it up to #1 selling book in that genre in 10 minutes and call myself a best-selling Amazon author. Right? So it's lost its credibility for authority writing a book.
Yeah.
So how do we stamp our authority now? Well, we do two things. We do what you and I did today, where we speak at a conference and are head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah.
That is what gives you authority, because you can't fake that. I can't Google that. I can't ring all my friends and say, buy a ticket. Either people come away and go, wow, that motivated me, or it didn't. You with me? You can't fake that.
Yeah.
Right? Or your other way of creating authority is to do something that stands out and put it out into the world in a way that resonates and makes sense. Right? And to give you the last example, last prop.
Yeah.
Right? Remember I said about getting people to open up.
Yeah.
Okay? And they don't like it, and they're afraid, and they're suspicious.
So we got what looks like a wand here, because 90% of podcasts are audible, but we got a wand.
We've got a wand here, right? Now, Mike, you need help with growing your reputation and growing your image around the world.
Yep.
I want you to take that wand, hold it, and I want you to imagine what you would like to achieve if I could use that wand to give you everything you wanted in the next 12 months. What would it look like? Now what happens is I've opened up your imagination. I've removed your resistance to it by having a bit of fun with the children's toy of a magic wand. It creates a totally different atmosphere.
You're right. It immediately took me to a very specific, smart as in a kind of specific measurable goal of what that might be.
Yeah, and it opened up your imagination. And the greatest sales tool of all is a customer's imagination. If the customer can see themselves with or in your solution, with a future that's better than the future they have today, if they can see that in their imagination, are they going to say no?
Listen, Peter, I think that's a great wrap up. I'm still holding the wand there. But listen, let me give you that. We're definitely going to have a follow-up because sales is the lifeblood of business. Peter Turley, we had a great time when I first met you. I've enjoyed our conversation today. You inspire me. You are unforgettable. And I love the degree of simplicity with which you connect, explain, and teach people about selling. You also create a comfort of selling not being a kind of fearful thing, but being a fun thing.
Oh, it has to be fun.
And yet most people, selling is the furthest from fun they could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. If you've enjoyed, do follow, do share, do like. Peter's details will be below in the details. Follow Peter. If you want to find out about how to work with Peter, how to speak to Peter, the details will be there, and we will follow up with another session. Thanks very much to joining us on Success System. And we are in Dublin, so we do have the black stuff, the magic pints. Thank you very much.
Class.